How are you? Good, good. There's a drag mark here of something. That's Mr. Graham Wallington on game drive, of course. Trying his hand at guiding today, which of course is an excellent idea. In fact, that's the entire brains trust of Wild Earth sitting on that vehicle there. What is your route?
Say again?
What is your route?
Our route, it was to go to Buffelshoek Dam, but you parked in the road over there, which makes that impossible. So we're going down here.
You could go that way, yes. Okay, good. We'll enjoy that. See you later. One must perform well when the CEO is watching, of course. I'm now sweating even more profusely than I was before. That drag mark doesn't look very new to me. Did you manage to see it, Brian? Could you see it? So, I'm half tempted to follow it on foot. I'll tell you what. No, we can't drive down there. We'll go into the drainage line here and just have a quick look. It's definitely been driven over, though. Possibly a few times. Let me just plug myself back in so that I can hear Nicola Austin's sweet and sultry tones. I'm back, Nicola. Now, Rich Levy, you wanted to know who was the brains trust behind Safari Live? Well, that was it right there. Graham apparently has been knocking about in these parts for about 17 years, and I'm sure, as Jamie told you, Wild Earth began, well, in its earliest guise, as a 30-second upload of a single JPEG from the Djuma Dam there, which I think is quite remarkable how far it's come since then. And hundreds of cameras, if I'm not mistaken now, around the world as a result of that initial placement here at Djuma. Now, a little bit in two minds as to what to do here. There's a diker looking very chilled out and relaxed. I think what I would like to do, everyone, is go and head off and just have a little bit of a walk in here and see if I can't find something. If I don't, obviously I shall cry, but I won't do that live. So let's head across to Jamie and see what she's up to, and I will give you an update on what these are doing in about probably 5 or 10 minutes.
Awesome, exciting stuff. So while James follows up on that drag mark, I've widened my search circle and I've come onto Mumba Road, which is also one of Tingana's favorite little highways to cross through, and Mvula, actually, if I'm completely honest. I've also seen his tracks here and I bumped into him once. We'll just see if maybe those leopards crossed a little bit further to the east of where we first thought they had. Still no sign of tracks, so I'm starting to feel as if I might be on a wild goose chase, but I refuse to accept it. And I feel as though now I've promised Dave a leopard this afternoon, I better make good on that. Interesting. Drag marks going into the drainage line. Train of thought gone. Sorry, derailed, but it's a hyena track, it's not a leopard track. False alarm. It's one of those interesting things, that split that you do with your mind and with your attention. While we're talking, we're chatting to you, the whole time we're sort of concentrating on the road in front of us. Obviously, luckily, you get to the point where driving on these roads is second nature. But you also get to the point where you're focusing on tracks in the road, you're focusing on your peripheral vision, trying to make sure that you don't miss anything. And goodness knows, our regular viewers are familiar with just how cryptically camouflaged something like a leopard can be. It's important to kind of divide your attention in different directions. Well, that's an interesting question that's come through from Kathy, and it's actually a question that I do not know the answer to, but I strongly suspect that our regular viewers who are incredibly up to date with the comings and the goings of the various leopards of the Sabi Sands and the greater Kruger area, I suspect that our long-term viewers might know the answer to this. So I'm going to put Kathy in a strange turn of affairs. I'm actually going to put Kathy's question through to you guys. Kathy was wondering about the half-tail leopard female and where she might be and if she is still around. Now, Kathy, I'm part of a group, a sort of social media group that follows a lot of the leopard sightings updates from the different guides around the area. And we get regular updates. I haven't, while I've been working for Wild Earth, to the best of my memory, heard any updates about the half-tail female. That being said, I'm unfamiliar with her territory. I'm unfamiliar with where she came from or where she used to be, or in fact how old she is. So I'm going to put that to our regular viewers. I know Ellen Fowler and Raisa and many of the others will probably have a better idea than I do. And I'm just throwing two names out there. I know that there are lots of you on board our safaris that are very, very avid followers of the leopards of the Sabi Sands. So please, if you have an answer to Kathy's question, you can just send that through to #SafariLive on Twitter or email through the update to questions@wildearth.tv. And you'll be doing me an enormous service because you're educating not just Kath or answering Kathy's question, but you're also educating me in terms of leopards that I might be a little bit less familiar with. I used to work much further off towards the southwest of where we are now, closer towards those gorgeous Drakensberg mountains that are currently hidden beneath a blanket of cloud, and by the looks of it, rain over there on the horizon. Come on, rain. It would be nice if you decided to come and grace us with your presence instead of taunting us just a couple of kilometers in a straight line towards the mountains. Now Jamie, you missed that. I wasn't paying attention. There was one of our lovely battaliers that live along Leadwood and Mumba Road. I'm going to try and see if I can relocate it once again. Nothing quite as striking in the bird world as a battalier. But just while I do that, and while we're also on our leopard search, of course, and second name Tilope, I appreciate that, by the way. I enjoy your abusing username. And Tilope would like to know what is the size of a male leopard's territory and a female's leopard territory. And since our battalier has appeared to have escaped us, I can't see where it flew off to, I shall answer your question as best I can. So, first of all, let's go with a general rule. Male leopard's territories are larger than a female's and tend to encompass several female territories within their own. That being said, each territory is dependent. I see you. Here's one of our early warning systems for the presence of a leopard. Hello, little girl. There's a little female kudu poking its head out of the bushes at me. I see you, gorgeous. Apparently we've been seeing quite a few kudu today. They're such extraordinary animals with those large radar-like ears and graceful necks, and keen eyesight, and as I said, early warning systems. The deepest, loudest bark of any of the antelope species to carry through the distance. I know that Brent yesterday afternoon on the Sunset Safari mentioned that if you stop and look at a kudu, you'll usually find that there are many more. And he's absolutely correct in this particular instance. There is one hiding in the bushes. I don't think Dave's going to be able to show you him, but there is one hiding in the bushes off to her left. Antelope, I haven't forgotten. Antelope, make sure I get those pauses and spaces in the right place. I haven't forgotten about your question. I promise I'll be back with you in 2 seconds. I just want to stop and enjoy this kudu sighting. Eyes positioned on the side of the head to give it the widest possible peripheral vision, widest field of view. Important when you are a regular prey species for a lot of the different predators out here, including leopards. A male leopard of Tingana size would definitely be capable of taking one of these females down. And then those large ears providing the perfect all 360-degree hearing of the world around them. Of course, their sideways sitting eyes in complete contrast to the forward-facing eyes of the predators. I believe that Quarantine and Kanyuma, actually, the one time that I have ever seen Kanyuma was on a kudu kill, but both Quarantine and Kanyuma, Karula's adult sons, her twin boys, both expert kudu hunters. Such beautiful, graceful little antelope. In terms of their size, when you compare them, for example, to a leopard like Kwetile, that comes from a different lineage, or she comes from a related but different lineage with a very, very different physical aspect. And our regular viewers, of course, will attest to the fact that there are clear physical differences, not just in terms of the spot patterns of each individual leopard, but also just their overall physical appearance. And there's a very, very strong family resemblance between Karula and Thandi, who we're looking for now, and Shadow, her daughter, that lives mainly around Arathusa and Simbambili. So an interesting and quite a complex question. Thank you very much to Ellen Fowler. I knew that one of our regular viewers will come through for us, and Ellen Fowler is one of our viewers who can be considered to be an expert at IDing and keeping track of the different leopards of the Sabi Sands. Now, Ellen sent through an answer to Kathy's question about the half-tailed female. Now, apparently, she's not one of our leopards, and we say our with the greatest level of affection and the probably slightly broad term to call them our leopards, but as Ellen says, not one of the leopards we see on our safari. Apparently a leopard made famous by Big Cat Diaries. So I'll go and do a little bit of research for you, Kathy, and the nice thing is that I probably, between the presenters and myself, one of us will probably know a guide who works in the area that she was filmed in. And we might be able to pull some strings and figure out exactly what's happened to her and if she's still around, alive and kicking, or if age has started to take its toll. But thank you very much to Ellen for that update. I really, really appreciate it. Sorry, excuse me. Now, I'm sure you're all wondering how James's search of that drag mark went, and I think I should let the man in question tell you himself.
My search, I'm afraid, turned up nothing. I don't think that drag mark was particularly fresh. I walked down into the drainage line and I found nothing. I heard some crunching sounds and I thought, oof, there, a leopard is eating something. And then I walked a little bit closer, deeply excited. And then I realized that the crunching sound was much too deep to be the crunching of bones. And what it was is that hollow sound that buffalo bulls make when they bash heads. It makes the most amazing and very distinctive sound. Once you've heard it, you can't mistake it for anything else, except if your psychology is telling you that you're looking for a leopard that is perhaps eating something that it has dragged. I'm going to try and get over this, and we're going to take Hyena Road, because Brian did spot a leopard track heading off in this direction. Now, this is quite interesting, because Karula has been spending a bit of time in this area of late. Now, Rebecca, you are in Arkansas, and while we are driving along here, failing to find anything in the way of large game, you were watching yesterday, and your granddaughter had a question about the bumps that we drive over. And Rebecca, the bumps that we drive over are indeed man-made, and they're not speed bumps, although they do act as such as well. What they are is drainage humps. So it's extremely important that we drain the roads. I mean, not this year, obviously, because there's no rain, but in years of rain, when the water flows down a road, it can create a major erosion gully. In fact, this road is a good example of a road that perhaps hasn't had quite the attention it has needed. And there's a bump ahead of us. And what a road does, of course, is it acts as a channel for water. And if you don't put these gullies, these bumps in, the water just carries on going, and eventually you have two rivers going down, and that results in soil loss and other horrible things like that. So bumps like the one we're about to go over now are in fact drainage humps to try and make sure that the water flows off the road. I'm hoping maybe, perhaps, on the off chance, we'll find some tracks going across here. Buffelshoek Dam is off that direction there, to the east. And we will fetch up there eventually, but I just want to slowly drive along here and see if we can't find something. Now, apparently, there's a lovely story here from Darlene in New Hampshire. You say that many people, local people or indigenous peoples, believe that hummingbirds are the bringers of rain, so colored the way they are because they have flown through rainbows. What a really wonderful story. Of course, we don't get any hummingbirds here. We get the evolutionary equivalent, which would be a sunbird, also brightly colored. So perhaps they flew through rainbows. They're going to be decidedly dull by the time next year comes, I can tell you that for free. Things are going to get a little bit taxing out here if you happen to be a grass or leaf eater. But that's okay. This is the way it happens. Here are some beautiful nyala, some youngsters, some young ewes, or cows, you can call them ewes or cows. Darlene, just on the subject of the drought, while we look at these beautiful nyala, which they seem to be maintaining their condition pretty well. They're looking pretty fat. You can tell immediately if they lose condition, of course, by the fact that their hips will stick out. But I think they're doing okay at the moment, so that's good to see. And just for those of you who are perhaps new viewers, this drought is now the driest on record. And indeed, as Brian was saying, the hottest? January was the hottest month
since we've been recording
in recorded history. So that doesn't mean, obviously, since the 4.5 billion. Oh, right. Oh, I see. Right. Actually, it comes, Brian's just correctly pointed out, that it comes from the word Here, which means God. So it's a little bit like saying, oh, God. I didn't realize that, so I apologize for any who may have taken offense. But it basically means goodness. Goodness gracious me. Elephant tracks are heading that way. I don't know why the birds would have been shocked by elephants, though. I'm going to drive a bit quicker. Tally-ho. Phew, I nearly took my hat off there and you saw my bald spot. That would have been a great shock to all concerned. If the signal does get a little bit dodgy through here, I apologize. It's not because Steph's using the vacuum cleaner again. Not sure what on earth he was vacuuming at this time of the day on a Friday afternoon. Certainly wasn't my bedroom, as Nicola was trying to hint. I don't believe Steph would be vacuuming my bedroom. Or indeed his own. Okay, let's just nip along here and we'll see what we can find. It was round about about the next bend that I thought I heard the alarm calling babblers and the Franklins. And the elephant tracks were heading this way. They've come across this road here. Possibly going off towards the east. There are elephant tracks here. Let's just go a little bit further and turn off and have another listen. Listening, of course, is a massively important part of the trekking process, especially if you have eyes like mine. There's a game path that comes out here, and it was just down there on that slope that I heard those birds calling. It might be nothing, you know, but it's worth just having a look here and a listen, especially given the vast swathe of large animals we've managed to find you during the course of this day. Now everything is stony silent, but for the strident stridulation of one lonely mole cricket off to the west. Brian, do you think the mole cricket has seen a leopard?
Might be.
I don't. Thank you very much, Gracie, for your warning and for your care of the animals out here. Gracie says that I mustn't eat any further leaves or grasses or anything else that the animals might eat because there is a drought on and we don't want to be taking forage from animals that might need it. Gracie, I will make sure to certainly eat less than I do normally on game drive. Sometimes, Gracie, I get hungry too, you know. So I might just have 1 or 2 leaves now and again, just from a buffalo thorn, if that's okay. No tracks coming out here. There's a nyala looking particularly unfazed by life. In other words, he doesn't look like he's spotted a leopard or heard one approaching. Now, nyala, of course, will definitely react to bird alarm calls. Those first 2 female nyala that we were looking at, some Franklins did alarm call and they all looked straight away immediately. So they do react to bird alarm calls. Of course, I've no doubt you get some nyala, a bit like human beings, that are talented at avoiding predators and others that aren't so talented. But of course, the latter category tends to find themselves fairly dead fairly fast. I'm going to turn around now. And Mary, your question will be answered by Brian the Thumb Gilbert. Mary, you're in Michigan. You want to know about the effect of heat on the cameras. Brian?
Yes.
Does heat affect the cameras?
Yes.
Yes. Does it affect it in a bad... What happens, Brian? At what temperature do you think we would have a problem with the camera?
I'm not too sure, but when it's hot, things go wrong.
So, Mary, what Brian is saying to you in a fairly roundabout fashion is that, yes, absolutely, the heat does affect the cameras. I think the little one probably more so than the big ones, or...
No, the bigger cameras got
a heat warning.
High temperature warning
Right.
way before the little one.
So I think we're probably pretty close to the limit for what this camera would be prepared to do. And certainly if it had reached what the forecast said it was going to supposed to reach about 40 degrees today. I don't think it quite hit that. I think it probably hit around 36 or 37. Certainly then the camera will shut down. Rusty the other day had a problem. We had to stop Rusty and wait for 10 minutes, open the back up, because of course in the back underneath where Brian's sitting is a lot of equipment that broadcasts from the camera to the aerial, which then sends it off into places I don't understand. And that equipment produces a huge amount of heat underneath Brian's bottom. Now, I'm not sure where Jamie is. I'm hoping she's having a little bit more success than I am. So let's go across to her and find out. I'm going to continue to Buffelshoek Dam.
Well, I successfully found an impala, if that counts as success. It wasn't quite what I set out to find, but the person that I did manage to find, which is really, really exceptionally good luck, was the man who reported the tracks himself. Sean from Arathusa happened to be travelling down Gowrie Main, and he tells me that he definitely saw those tracks coming onto Weaver's Nest, which is where we've spent the afternoon. The reason I want to show you this impala, I'm hoping he's going to turn to look at us. He's got a cataract or something in his right eye. Not damaged to the same extent that Nelson has the damaged eye. Nelson, the one-horned, one-eyed, one-ambition impala. But this one's also got some kind of damage to him, and it could well have been in a rut. I'm also taking the opportunity to sit and listen, because at this point, I'm so determined to find these leopards. Here we go. Can't really see it from here. Well, the impala's male's currently bulking up, getting as much nutrients as they can in preparation for mating season in 3 months' time, 3+ months' time, where they will focus on nothing. The big mature males, like this wonderful ram that we're looking at the moment, will focus on nothing except herding and mating with females, chasing other males away, and just generally making quite a lot of intimidating, or what they believe to be intimidating, noises in the form of the sounds that we heard earlier this afternoon. Quick scratch behind the ear. Come on, boy. I don't think you're going to be kind enough to show us your right eye. I believe that Nelson, the one-horned, one-eyed impala, who's become quite the celebrity impala as impalas go, Colleen was wondering when last Nelson happened to be seen. I believe that Brent saw him. Sure, Colleen, the days tend to blur a little bit into one big safari drive for me. It was a couple of days ago. That's about as specific as I can give you. And I think it was just before I went on leave. He was seen. I always check and explore every bachelor herd of impala that I see in the hope that I catch on to Nelson or Harvey. I named him. That's when it was. Absolutely. That is when Harvey or Nelson. Okay, we'll go with Nelson. Nelson is now the official name. Brent won that particular competition. Carlini was seen on Valentine's Day, the sunrise safari on the 14th, because I was sitting in final control at the time. So that was 5 days ago. It gets a bit tricky. Time moves in very strange ways in the bush. It sort of fits and starts and swings and roundabouts. It's really easy to lose track of the days and the time that goes by. I very seldom know what day of the week it is, and in fact you'll be lucky if I can tell you what month we're in. Somebody tells me we're in February, apparently. One of those wonderful things about bush living. First of all, if you work 7 days a week, weekends don't really matter in terms of any kind of difference in the way that your working day goes. But also then the days pass very quickly. I'm just speeding up a little bit. I want to make it around onto one last road that I haven't checked. The knowledge that these leopards are somewhere, this is the perfect time for us to find them. It's cooled down a little bit. I know that James has touched on the heat and the drought and the incredible temperatures that we've been experiencing this afternoon. But now that it's a little bit cooler, they might be more active, and then they might get a little bit more vocal. But I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need you to keep an eye on the Djuma Dam camera for me. I refuse at this point to give up, but if we don't locate them this evening, there's a very, very strong possibility that Tingana and therefore Tundi might wander through up towards the Djuma Dam to have a drink. Right, I refuse to accept defeat yet though. We still have, okay, we've got just under an hour. I was going to say we still have an hour, but it's less. Oh, we've got to find these leopards. Now, just to finish off our chat about the different impala that we were seeing in Nelson, Renee is actually wondering, what is the lifespan of an impala out here? And in the wild remain, they generally, particularly the males, because they tend to have quite a few more distractions in their lives than the females. They tend to get very distracted around May, they get distracted around June, and then they get very confused in November and January when the ewes give birth and they think that it's mating time, because for some reason it's sort of the pheromones that are floating around ignites quite a sense of confusion within them, and they lose track a little bit of keeping vigilant. Now you're looking at probably about 6 years old would be an average lifespan of an impala. The females might live a little bit longer. Could, I suppose, get up to 10. I'm not sure what the longest lived impala recorded is in captivity. That's an interesting point. I might have to double check that. But on average, quite a short lifespan. And of course, if you're going to average it out, it's quite a difficult thing to do because of the incredibly high infant mortality rate. So those little lambs, in terms of the numbers that are born versus the numbers that make it to a year old, probably less than 50% of them actually reach adulthood or get past that crucial stage. When they're young on spindly legs, they're the perfect little racing snack box for any incoming predator, from leopards to lions. Even lions will feast upon it or essentially swallow a baby impala whole. I remember what I had to tell you. Interestingly, and this is an update for Scott as well. Sorry, distraction. An interesting update from this morning. And for Scott, because there was mass confusion about the one lioness that we could see versus the fact that Scott actually saw a track on Impala Road. There's one lioness, one Nguma lioness at One-Eyed Pan at Simbabili. As to why they've split up like that, I honestly couldn't tell you. I really honestly do not have a clue why they've split like that. But an interesting update nonetheless. So one female off on her own at One-Eyed Pan. By the looks of things, the rest of them have crossed towards Buffelshoek. But we know our leopards haven't crossed. We know that they're somewhere here. And we know that mating leopards don't tend to cover huge amounts of ground. So, where are they? Where are they hiding? Why are they being so quiet and sneaky? Interesting. Still pondering on that. The fact that that lioness is all on her own at One-Eyed Pan. Right. I think it's time to adopt the patience technique. It's time to stop and listen. Maybe I should try and find you a nice view of the sky while I do that. Because it really is quite beautiful looking. Here we go. It's just going to have to do for now. Look at those stunning clouds. Nikki made a comment that it's almost like, in parts, more so earlier than it looks now, but she suggested that it looked almost like a Van Gogh painting. That swirly style of his. Come on, leopards. Come on, Thandi. We need you to give yourself away. It's interesting that Thandi has made her way straight back to where we first, for me personally, my very first sighting of Thandi, and I think for most of the viewers, the first time they had ever seen her, in the Mulwati drainage line. And that was only a couple of weeks ago. So as I mentioned earlier, that obviously that mating wasn't successful. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the statistics are in terms of the success of the various mating, the success of mating attempts versus actual successful fertilization, but I do know it's not uncommon for leopards to mate in fairly quick succession. Stunning sky. Thank you, Dave. I haven't heard that many woodlands kingfishers. Chirp, chirr. Here we go. There's a challenge for you all. Something that I know that Brent started with, suggesting to viewers maybe they could send through their best leopard mating impression, which is of course the sound that I'm looking for at the moment, but I've been distracted by the woodlands kingfisher that's calling off in the tree. That beautiful sound that is so typically summer out here. So I challenge you all to send us through your best woodlands kingfisher impression. Mine is absolutely terrible. I personally think it's one of the most impossible calls to imitate. Brian does it exceptionally well, but Brian's just like that. Brian just has the imitating down to the ground. Nikki has just fed through a perfect impression of the Woodlands kingfisher, so maybe it's not as difficult as I suggest it might be. That choop, churr. What do you think, Dave? No, not passable. Dave's giving me a sort of a so-so. So-so. Fair, that's fair. Next time, Dave, next time, I'm going to get you to imitate something else. Come on, leopards. Heidi, who is watching in Switzerland, was watching where Scott stopped, speaking about birds and their beautiful calls. Scott stopped for one of the most drab bird species that happens to have one of the most incredible calls, and that is a Nat.Geo. Now Heidi looked up the German translation of Nat.Geo, which roughly translated means night swallow. Heidi, my German pronunciation is appalling. Let me try this. What did you say? It was a Nachtschwalbe. I'm sorry, Heidi, if I'm butchering the pronunciation. Schwalbe. Nachtschwalbe. Sorry, Heidi. Anyway, that translates as a night swallow. And Heidi, you're wondering, does that mean it is the same as a swallow in a jar? Hyena. I was just thinking about you, chaps. Can you see him there, Dave? He is through the trees there. If you go directly, there he is. Perfect, thank you. Well done. What are you up to? You mischief? What you doing? Should we go and investigate? Let's find out what that hyena is up to. I think he's just on the move. Probably spent the day napping in the drainage line. Let's go see if we can get a bit closer and figure out which hyena it is. Heidi, a Nat.Geo is not the same thing as a swallow. It is just a species of bird. And I promise you I'll answer that question. I'll get back to that question in a second. I want to just try and figure out, because there's one other animal that leopard mating sounds might attract apart from lions, and that is hyena. They're curious creatures by nature, and there is a chance that this particular individual came to investigate. Unfortunately, he's going into the worst possible block, so I'm not going to go too much further, especially with Jigger's universal joint being as it is. Oh, spotted hyena proving to be elusive. I don't see him. Do you see him, Dave? I don't. He's vanished. Well, that's a mystery. Here we go. I think Dave spotted him. Well done, Dave. Ah! Hey, well done, Dave. Perfect. Oh, I better go forward a bit. There we go. Awesome. What have you got there, mister? Or missus? I love them. There's always something either guilt-ridden or mischievous about their facial expressions. He's just sleepy. He's just tired. Those notched ears. My guess would be this is one of the males of the clan. It is a guess. It is totally a guess, and I can't actually see it properly. The notches in the ears, all hyenas have those funny notches. Madam, the matriarch of the clan, definitely has notches in her ears, but I think this hyena is a little bit small for that. Also, don't imagine she'd be this far. No, I mean, that's not true. She could well be this far from the den. But at this time of the evening, unless she had a carcass to feed on, it's more likely that she'd be making her way back towards the den site. Hot. Poor hyena is boiling. So am I, actually. It feels as if it's got hotter. Now, this hyena is preparing for a long evening of foraging. Is a nocturnal creature. So, Rice, you were wondering, oh, what fearsome teeth you have. The big bad wolf of the bushveld. Of course, they're not wolves. They're not related to, or they're not part of the canid family. But back to what we were saying, yes, preparing for a long evening of foraging and scavenging. Rice was wondering, where do hyenas sleep at night? For the most part, they're active during the evenings, and they spend their daytimes. If they are a female or a female without cubs, or a clan male, they'll find themselves a nice spot, either in drainage lines in the shade, or they'll go through to some of those pans, muddy pans, that occasionally we get. Unfortunately, most of them have dried out. Or they'll even go across to the Galago pan and spend their, exhausted. Quite a full belly as well. I wonder what they've been munching on. Rice, that's where they'll spend their day. They might sleep a little bit in the evening, rest a little bit, but for the most part, entirely nocturnal creatures. The only real exception to that is hyenas. Hyenas sleeping around a den site. And speaking of den sites, I believe that the fantastic Mr. Hendry has arrived at what I always think of as the Hendry Den, which is one that he discovered himself. Let's find out what's happening there.
Well, I think that's very kind of Jamie to say that this is the Hendry Den. I mean, we did kind of just stumble upon it. Anyway, it's the den on Mvubu Road, and there is Corky, the hyena. You can see that by the scarring just between her ears there. And behind her is her little cub, and that's one of the Decembers. That's D1, we've taken to calling her, and we can see that from the fact that her back left foot has got that little white patch on it. It's very distinctive, very unusual. It's white underneath as well, and the fur on top of the toes has remained white, just like many domestic dogs, which of course have much more color variation than hyenas, even though they're not related to hyenas, of course. But just like you will find that on domestic cats and dogs, where their pads might be a pinkish color, they will normally have white toes as a result of that. So she is suckling. I think the other one is just the other side of the female. Then in the den itself, which we can't see at the moment, is certainly, I think probably November. It looked like November was there. We're just behind this fairly substantial Pyrostria hystrix bush. That's the scraggly thing you could see on the right-hand side. It's called a porcupine bush. And somewhere through there is the rest of the clan, or the rest of the young members of the clan. I think Jamie seemed to think she had Madam with her wherever she is. I'm not sure where Jamie is at the moment, and that means that we won't be seeing the very small little ones, because she, of course, is the mother of those two little ones born in January. You see Corky's ears there, of course, are in a bit of a sad state, and that's just from a life of hardship. She's had a life of fighting. She's had a life of running through thorn bushes, but it's probably mainly from fighting over kills and trying to compete for food. Not easy being a hyena, and I don't know, we're not sure exactly where into the ranking of this clan that she fits, but she's certainly not the most subordinate hyena. She's shown quite a lot of dominance, certainly at the other den before Madam came along. Corky was the dominant female there, but since Madam had her cubs in this den, Corky has remained fairly subordinate to her. Bye-bye. That's Craig, who's just leaving. And now Jamie is still within this clan's territory, so she's on Twin Dams Road at the junction with Elephant Skull Road. And that's not, I mean, that's quite far from here, but it's certainly within this territory. Now, with Craig leaving, I'm going to sneak a bit closer and hope that we can get a bit of a view of the other members of the clan. So I'm going to sneak very slowly closer to them. Corky is very used to us, so I'm hoping she won't react at all. Let's see what she does. We'll just wait for them. Look at that dust puffing up as she sighs in the heat, obviously deeply fatigued by the strain of motherhood. Right, the little one's out. Well, one of them is certainly. I'm going to try desperately not to make a noise. Oh. You see that one there, Brian?
Yeah.
There. Oh, don't go in. Don't get in. I'm going to stop right here, everyone. Isn't that sweet? They're the little ones. And November seems to be looking after them. That is just fantastic. Look at them, trying to smell us. Now let's try and see if we can't find some kind of differentiating factor for them. I'm not sure we will be able to. That beautiful sort of white tip to the tail that D1 has is very unusual, and I haven't seen it on any other hyena. Not tail, tip to the foot. Oh, they're so sweet. Look at this. This is fantastic. Now, while we look at these beautiful hyenas, and I do wax lyrical about them, Ashley, you want to know what animal I would be if I could be any other animal other than the one that I am? I wouldn't be a hyena, I don't think. I think if I wanted to be a mammal, I'd probably be an elephant. It lives a long time. No one really gets in its way. It's pretty danger-free out here. Great communication skills. So if I was going to be a mammal, probably an elephant. If I was going to be any animal at all, I would probably be something like a Battalier eagle or a martial eagle, soaring in the sky day after day with magnificent views of in everywhere I looked. Everyone pretty nervous of me. And I think that would be a pretty good life. Pretty long-lived, up to sort of 30 years maybe. This is too sweet for words. We don't know who's male and female, or if they're both male. Unlikely they're both female, especially as they're born to the matriarch, but not impossible. Oh, look at that. Now, Chris Applegate, as we watch those hyenas, show that they just are not quite coordinated yet. You want to know if hyenas often wander off on their own, and perhaps thinking about the one that Jamie had. Absolutely they do. When they're adults, they do most of their foraging alone in this particular area. They don't do a great deal of foraging for themselves, at least in a clan, unless they hear something dying, unless they hear a kill going on, then they don't tend to worry. Then they don't tend to wander off on their own. They'll normally approach a kill and try and scavenge it from lions in a group, but otherwise they'll normally forage on their own, especially in this particular area. It's so sweet, it really is. And it always amazes me if you think about how sort of vulnerable a young baby is, a young human baby is, and how they have to be held and mollycoddled and kept from any kind of injury or bumping. You look, that hyena is now, about a month old, perhaps, just over a month. They are flopping down from a great height, dropping on the floor, bashing all over the place. They've got absolutely no problem at all. They don't seem to show any ill effects at all. That is the Brains Trust arriving. I don't know if you guys want to go, if you go in just behind us there, you'll see the little ones. Yeah. They're right on the den side here. I'm just directing Graham so that he can go around and have a look and see the little ones. Hopefully they won't run in. There will be, you can hear, as soon as they hear a little bit of sound, they go towards their safety net, which of course is that hole in the den. Corky, in the meantime, has not moved. She's lurking quietly in front of us, and her little babies are suckling. Oh, there's D2. You can see her there, obviously sucking on the other teat. Hyenas, interestingly, only have 2 teats. They're called, what are they called? They're not called inguinal, that's the other kind. I've forgotten what they're called. But they're pretty much located where your cats or dogs would be, but they're only 2. So they are very different from the cats and the dogs, but obviously mostly different from the dogs. In a family all on their own. Now, Brian, you are in Toronto, where I imagine the temperature is couldn't be more different than the temperature is here. It's about 7,000 degrees here. It's like swimming in a volcano at the moment. Where in Toronto, I'm sure it's probably pushing -20. You want to know when, if both of the cubs are female, when will one of them kill the other? Normally, almost at birth, sort of definitely within the first week or 2. So the fact that these 2 are still scuttling about the place, seemingly good friends, means to me that siblicide is not going to happen. And that could mean that they're either both male, or one's male and one's female. It's possible that they're both female, but given that they're related to Madam, who is they're not related, I mean they're the offspring of Madam, who is the dominant matriarch female, I think it's highly unlikely that they're both female. Now that there is November, greeting D2 or December 2. Very sweet now, and I mean they're venturing quite far from the den. There's little D2, moving further away from Mum. And that's November, who was left as the nursemaid for the little ones, which I think is fascinating. Normally those little ones would only come out if there wasn't an adult very close by. Just foraging there. Look at the wonderful colours there of the tambuti leaves. Wonderfully framing what is still a very beautiful pelage on that little hyena. Of course, once they get a bit older and a bit like Corky, well, then the fur just ain't quite so pretty. But, you know, that's from a life of hardship. Look at this little one approaching the car now. You can see the little white sock. Isn't that sweet? So that's D1. Deborah, armchair traveller, while D1 approaches us at a full charge. You want to know if June is here. I haven't seen June, Deborah, so I'm not sure where she is at the moment. Assassination with vehicles once they become adults. It's really quite interesting. I've been at a hyena den where the oil caps have been pinched, all 4 of them, pinched off the vehicle because they're so interested and so curious. But once they turn to adults, a bit like human adults who obviously aren't quite as curious as youngsters, they lose that fascination because they know that we're nothing to eat and there's nothing on this vehicle that is worth eating. Isn't that sweet? Just trying to smell a whole suite of very strange smells. Brake fluids and clutch fluids and steering fluids and oil and petrol and Brian's spectacular aftershave, his glorious shampoo to keep his locks as blonde and marvellous as they are. A whole suite of smells assailing that hyena's nostrils, which of course are very sensitive indeed. And of course mixed amongst that will be a smell that is imprinted into the DNA of that hyena, and that is the smell of man. And hyena will recognize the smell of man very, very closely. Look, there's the other one coming up now. Now, James Richard, you have noticed that one of the youngsters, the little January babies, seems to have some scarring or some kind of skin disease. James, I've noticed it too, but I've noticed it a lot with those little hyenas when they've still got that black fur. I think you'll find that black fur is quite a lot softer than this fur that they have. I think that they do a lot of digging and lying about in the middle of the den. They probably frolic about there, and I think that hair just comes out. I don't think it's any kind of skin disease, and I don't think it's scarring either. I think it's just that hair is sort of almost replaceable. And once it gets to the sort of spotted fur, then it tends to be a lot more robust. So all of the youngsters that I've seen have either had, certainly November, had horrible, what looked like scarring on the front of her face, but that's completely gone now. And it was just the black fur that I think is not quite as robust as this normal fur. Comes again. This is just wonderful. Now, wonderful question from Sarah in North Carolina. Sarah, you want to know if there would be a reprimand or perhaps a disciplinary hearing for the adult left behind should the matriarch's cubs come to some sort of harm while she was away. No, there wouldn't, Sarah. I don't think so. I mean, certainly I haven't heard of any disciplinary hearings being convened as a result of something like that. It's very unlikely that those cubs would come to harm, certainly from another predator. They might injure each other, but as soon as they smelt or heard a predator coming, Corky would be up. Those cubs would disappear into the den at a huge speed, and then it would be absolutely fine. Now, I think what I'm going to try and do is move a little bit forward. I just don't want to disturb Corky, although she isn't feeding anymore. She's not suckling. So let's sneak a little bit forward so we can get a better view there at the den. Well, I'll just roll. There we go. I'll just roll forward. Isn't that sky fantastic? I'll just try and start the car. 1 second, everyone. Views of hyena coming up. There we go. Corky is being tremendously tolerant of us this close. She's obviously had an exhausting day of mothering and nursemaiding for all the little cubs here. There they are, they're all out now. Isn't that wonderful? There's a little one in the mouth of the den, and then there's another one just at the back, about to come around into your picture now. Look at that. Look how sweet. This is too precious. I've never seen them all out like this, everyone. This is why I love the hyena den so much. I could spend all day here, happily, just watching goings on. Now, Viv Ford, you are deeply distressed by the fact that these hyenas look and behave like your dog or like domestic dogs do, and you're distressed by the fact that they are more closely related to cats, and you want to know how is that possible? You don't get it. What's going on? Viv, they're actually most closely related, probably. I mean, they're in the family of their own, right? Now, the carnivore order to which they all belong is splits sort of in the middle into the dog-like carnivores and the cat-like carnivores. Now, there are various complicated taxonomic definitions for why those sort of why those distinctions are there. But I mean, simply put, genetically, they are far more closely related to cats than they are to dogs. Physically, it's not obvious at all. And I mean, certainly they've got claws that don't retract, which is exactly like a cat, at least like a dog. But they don't have a dog-like social structure. So these hyenas have a matriarchal society in which they live. No other mammal, other than the Cercopithecine apes or monkeys, which would be the vervet monkeys and the chacma baboon, only they have a complicated social structure like this. So although they're even more closely related to cats, they don't have a social structure that's vaguely related to them. And so you'll just have to accept, I'm afraid, that although they look a bit dog-like, I think what you'll find is once you've watched them for a while, they don't look like dogs. They've got that mane, they've got that tremendously heavy front part of the body. And remember that all dogs are derived from the wolf. Every single breed, from those beastly little things you put in your handbag up to a great big Irish wolfhound, they all come from wolves. Now, if you think of the ancestors of wolves, or you think of wolves as they are now, I don't think that you would say a wolf looked tremendously like a hyena in its build. These hyenas have got very heavy in the front. They've got massive jaw muscles attached to their heads. They've got much bigger jaws. And there, I mean, that's a beautiful outline there of Corky. You can see the way that her outline, the way she's built, is very different from a wolf's build. A wolf is much heavier at the back. It's much slighter. It's not nearly as thick-set and nearly as muscular as a hyena is. It doesn't have that mane that sticks up at the back of the head. So I think once you've watched them for a while, they start to look less and less like dogs. Now, just before the light fades, Jamie's got another scavenger, this time an avian variety. Let's go and check it out.
And I just had to tear you away from the den ever so briefly to show you this extraordinary image of the white-backed vulture silhouetted against what has turned out to be an extraordinary evening sky. And just look at that long neck, built, as James said, for scavenging, dipping down and ripping meat off pieces of carcass. Now, the fact that there is a vulture here, to me, doesn't necessarily suggest that there's any kind of carcass or any kind of kill underneath the tree. I think this vulture is just enjoying a nice place to sit and roost. And they're big birds, they're big bulky birds, so a dead tree provides a perfect resting place. They don't have to worry about getting tangled up in the dense foliage and the vegetation around them. So he'll probably spend the night here, wait for morning to come before setting off on a perusal of the skies to enjoy whatever else he manages to find. Such a perfect, beautiful bird. And before we send you back to James at the hyena den, and I was talking about his perusal of the skies, just have a look at the sky. It is the most extraordinary evening. Really, truly beautiful. The end of another blistering hot and beautiful summer's day here in the Sabi Sands. Now, before we lose too much light and James has to leave the den, I'm going to send you back across to him, so enjoy those little cubs, and I'm going to not give up on those leopards just yet.
We're not going to spend too much longer here, everyone, just because it's getting dark, and we're not going to shine a light on the den, especially with just the little ones there. That little ball of GoPros you can see there's called the virtual reality rig, for those of you who are new viewers, and I know there are a few of you. I think Al Zark was the one I remember, and we haven't used the VR rig today. So we will explain it as and when we use it. Look how sweet. Now, Miss Lynn, you're in North Carolina as well, and you want to know why it is that this hyena seem to have very stocky ankles and knee joints, joints up to their feet. Certainly the youngsters more so than the adults, but the adults even have got pretty stocky limbs. It's all to do with their feeding strategy, Miss Lynn. Remember that they eat a lot of bone, they eat a lot in the way of scavenged food, they fight each other and they fight other animals for food. And that means that they need to be stocky in the limb. They need to be able to stand their ground. They're not built for speed, they're built for conflict. They're the ultimate sort of warrior build out here. And while they do a lot of hunting, they do a lot of stealing and fighting each other and fighting lions and that sort of thing. And so they are built for conflict. They're not like a wild dog, which is built to course after other things. It's not built to take great physical pounding. And I think that's why you'll find, I mean, certainly whenever I see a hyena lying like this, you see the muscles on the shoulders all extending all the way down to the front feet, as Miss Lynn has pointed out. Incredible strength in the neck there, and obviously those giant jaw muscles attached to the back of the skull, and then feeding into the jaw, which allow it to exert such massive pressure. Oh, here's June. Question about June. I'm pretty sure this is June coming past us right now. Hello, old girl. They're right here. They're right here. M. Dakota, you want to know how it is that hyenas... She's just over here. I'm going to take a picture quickly for you. You want to know how it is that hyenas are able to eat rotting meat without getting sick. M. Dakota, they're able to do that because they have very powerful stomach juices. Let me try and take a picture, show you how close they are. One of them is right underneath the car, just about, smelling on the tires. M. Dakota, they're able to eat so much bad food, or seemingly bad food, simply because they have very powerful digestive juices, extreme amounts of stomach acid, and lots of bacteria that help them to digest all the nasty stuff that they eat. Now, they're able to do that more than most animals, but not completely, not that exceptionally. Lions can also eat absolutely rotten food, so can leopards, and they will do it on a regular basis. And they just have digestive systems that are able to cope with it. They don't have particularly sophisticated antibacterial or anti-pathogen properties, I don't believe. It's simply very powerful stomach acid and the enzymes required to get rid of sick meat. Oh my goodness. This little thing, Armchair Traveller June, at least Armchair Traveller Deborah, you were asking about June. June is now sitting, well, in fact, one of the Ds, D1 is sitting. I'm going to take a picture of her. I'll show you. You won't believe how close this hyena is to me. June is just behind her. I'll just try and take a photograph here. Something's happened. Something's up. Now, Chanel, you're 12 and you're watching with your dad, Mike, for the first time. That's very exciting stuff. Chanel, I'm just looking around here because it looked to me, did you see how they all scuppered towards the den, but now they all seem to have relaxed again, so I'm not sure what made them panic there. Chanel, you want to know when they become independent, when these little babies become independent? Well, they're at the den normally for more than a year, and the males will then become sort of sexually mature at about 2.5 years. They won't be able to breed yet. They won't be nearly able to dominate for mating opportunities then, but the females probably sexually mature at 2.5 to 3 years. But the males will then go off. They will leave the clan sometimes when they're about probably 2.5 to 3 years. The females will stay here, and so they don't ever really become independent of their natal clan. They will remain in the clan for their life. Now, what I want to show you is my amazing photograph. Brian, can you see it? That is how close the hyena was to the door of the car, and that is why you are unable to see D1, who is staring up at me, wondering what on earth that sticky outy thing is. It's such a tiny little cub, and that gives you a nice idea, actually, of how small D1 is. Isn't that pretty? All right, everyone, I think we're going to leave the hyenas now. It's a bit dark. So keep asking questions, and I'm going to pull out of the sighting. Now, as we depart very quietly, Travel Nut, you want to know if any of the hyenas in Kruger are different in any way from the hyenas found in the rest of the world, or the rest of the country, and the rest of the continent. Travel Nut, they're not different from any of the other spotted hyenas that we've found. So they're the same species of spotted hyena that you will see on documentaries about Zambia or Zimbabwe or Tanzania or Kenya or any other place in Africa where spotted hyenas are found. There are another 2 species of hyena, though. and one is the brown hyena and the other is the striped hyena. They are found far more in drier, more high-felt areas. They don't compete well with the spotted hyena. The spotted hyena will dominate just about every other predator except lions in the area that they are, so they're seldom found together. You do find brown hyena in the Kruger, but not much. Then there is actually a fourth hyena species that we get sometimes around here. It's called an Arathusa, which means earth wolf. It's not a wolf at all. It is a very small hyena that spends its life trying to eat termites. It doesn't do much else. It doesn't sort of scavenge like the other hyena species do. And then there is the striped hyena, which is found normally up in East Africa. Also, though, much smaller than the spotted hyena. Lives in a pair, I think. I think they live in pairs. So those are the little hyena, that's the hyena family that we have here. Oh, yes, let's stop here and have a look at the moon while we receive a question from Antelope. Oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, wow. And the clouds today, although we haven't found a great swathe of large game, have been truly magnificent. The clouds formations, I don't think I've seen of the splendor that they gave us today. Now, Antelope, you'd like to know how many different dens this clan has. At the moment, just the one, but they have used, while I've been here, which is almost a year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've used another 5 or 6 dens. So hyenas will have multiple clan den sites in their territories. And sometimes they'll use more than one. So certainly this one was active at the same time that the Gallagher shortcut one was active. Corky and Pretty were over there with their babies, and then Madam was over here with her 2 little youngsters, and they consolidated and they moved in here. In fact, at one stage, I think there were 3 active at the same time. So they will keep them active. There is a fiery-necked nightjar calling there. There we go. Okay, on that note, let's head across to Jamie, see what she's doing, and we'll head out from the hyena den.
Another glorious African evening draws to a close. The dwarf mongoose are safely tucked away in their beds. The antelope have all found their resting places for the evening. And as dark descends, it becomes the time of the leopards and the lions and the hyenas. And only tomorrow will tell what stories the night was witness to. I think at this point it's safe to say that unless I come around the corner straight into them, I fear as though my long and involved search this afternoon for the 2 mating leopards may have proved to be, for this afternoon, unsuccessful. Luckily for us, though, provides us with the incredible prospects for tomorrow morning's sunrise safari, where I will be one very determined tracking team, whilst Brent and Scott are on drive. I'll see if I can't find those leopards for you then. Dawn has got an interesting point. Back to just to finish off that update about the lioness at Simbambili. Dawn, you were saying, is there a possibility that she's pregnant and therefore separating to give birth? There's a possibility. I would suggest it's a little bit too soon after the Birmingham Boy takeover. As I'm sure Dawn and many regular viewers know, when a male coalition takes over a new area and starts mating with the females, they go into a couple of false oestruses before they actually have a genuine oestrus cycle, to make sure that the males are there to stay, essentially, so they don't waste any bodily resources on producing a litter of cubs that's got a very low survival rate. So Dawn, my guess, and it is just a guess, you could well be right, my guess is that we won't be seeing any lion cubs from the Nkuhumas for another few months. I could stand completely corrected on that. Of course, they're wild animals. Wild animals don't read the textbooks. They don't always follow the rules. The one thing I will say is that I've had, over the past few weeks, an opportunity to observe the Nkuhuma bellies very closely. And fortunately, and nice to see, wonderfully for them, I've had the opportunity to see them whilst very, very full of food. And I haven't seen any sign of impending birth. So no swollen nipples. Lions, generally it's actually quite clear to see. The nipples get large and darkened in color. And towards the actual birth, they start secreting an almost waxy-like substance around them. I haven't picked up any of those signs on the Nkuhuma lionesses. One thing that I did get a report of from Craig just before, while you were with James at the hyena den, was that the one lioness that is at Simbambili looks unbelievably full. So they've got a kill somewhere, and I must say the lioness I saw today that ran away from me also looked rather round-bellied. So at some point last night they killed something somewhere. The Nkuhumas have proved to be quite sneaky in that regard, but not as sneaky as our leopards have proved to be. No sign of them, no vocalizations of them. But tomorrow is another day. I'm just sad I've missed the opportunity to show Dave his first leopard. There you go, Dave says that's okay. Plenty of opportunity for that later. I will just concentrate on not falling off the damn wall. Well, as we draw to the end, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of you ladies and gentlemen. Some amazing questions came through this afternoon, thought-provoking and well thought out. I really enjoyed answering them. And thank you to Dave for the first time joining me. Really enjoyed having you on board, and I look forward to many more wonderful drives. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say a fond farewell for the evening and send you back across to Mr. Henry for the last few moments. Cheers and have a wonderful day or a wonderful evening wherever you are.
I just bashed my humerus on the edge of this Land Rover. Land Rover, of course, is made of very sharp angles. I can't feel my hand. Don't worry, everybody, I'll be all right. Just going to stop over here before I greet you fondly in the name of the sunset. There we go, Brian. Isn't that beautiful? So, thank you all for all of your efforts today on making this drive so entertaining. Wonderful questions and comments we've had, so thank you very much for those. And a big thank you to Brian, of course, on camera. Well done, Brian, of course. Nice to introduce you to the fun and to the Brains Trust today. Thank you to Jamie, of course, being filmed by David today. And, of course, Nicola and Leanne in the final control. It may have been Kirsty, I can't remember. We'll see you tomorrow at 05:30 during the rising sun. Bye-bye.